There's
Okay. So now I'm going to show you how to cut out the different fabric using the patterns we made before. And I made some more adjustments to them, especially the tail. I made it a little wider and added some more curves to some of the parts. And here basically you just take your pattern and pin it onto the fabric. Normally you take the pattern and add a 3/8 boundary to the outside just on paper and make the pattern itself bigger. But since there's so many pieces to this and it's really big, it would have been a lot of work to do that. So what I've done is just taken a little 3/8 piece of paper with a mark here and just use soap to mark different little hatch marks around 3/8 around all these different pieces. And now I'm just going to cut them out from that. And basically the reason you need to add this 3/8 border is so you can have some fabric to work with when you're using your sewing machine, and that's called your seam allowance. And you can make it as big or as small as you want. Obviously the smaller you get, the more difficult it's going to be to work with, but you can get some finer details, like at the points and tips of tail and bangs you want to get really close and have almost no seam allowance and basically sew as close to the edge of the fabric as you can to get the really fine details. And then this method of just adding the boundary right onto the fabric I used with my rainbow dash hair, because that's also really complicated and had a lot of big pieces like this. And it worked pretty well, so I'm just going to replicate it here with vinyl scratch. And when you're cutting out fabric, you use special scissors like this, and that's just basically for cutting fabric. And luckily we had one of the few things we didn't have to buy, starting all these different Plushie projects. And then, as you can see, all this kind of stuff takes time. Just I used about another hour to redesign these things just a little more, and I've been spending about 2 hours just getting everything set up here, pinning, marking with the soap, cutting out. I've got quite a few pieces done already, and then as I cut them out I just put them into place where they belong. I have everything labeled so I don't get it mixed up with anything else. Like this one is the side hair, and it's called the top middle. So here's the side hair. Top middle would go right here, and everything kind of lines up and matches up. And from there you can see all these things starting to take shape. Like here's the tail, here's the top of the hair, here's the side hair. And then from there basically you just take two of these things and pin them together and then start sewing. And that's where the real fun begins and things actually start taking actual shape. So I'm just going to spend a little more time here cutting everything out, and then obviously I'll do the same process for all the pieces of the body using the white fabric. And then from there I think I'll start our next video showing about how to pin things together for sewing and how everything gets oriented together and how the actual sewing process works. So there's the next step in making plushies. It's kind of the mundane stuff, just getting everything ready, but once you get everything cut out, then things start to really get going quickly. So that's it for now. Check in for our next video real soon. Okay, welcome back everyone. We're moving on to the next stage of making our plushies. And then the next part I've decided to do here is the embroidery, which involves both the cutie marks and the eyes. And I've got, for each pony there's basically 4 embroideries on each, so right now I've got 3 of them done, and I'm just going to spend some time showing you some things about them and how it goes to make them. So as you can see, like here's part of the body, and there's some excess fabric that I left around the outside here, and that's just to help make sure you can get the fabric nice and tight when you put it inside the embroidery hoop. And here's about the size of what we have to work with, so it fits around there nice and well. And if this excess wasn't here, there wouldn't be enough fabric to pull it tight. And if you don't pull your fabric tight, you get very low definition on the stitching. I've had mistakes a few times where like you get some of the fabric poking up between here, so you'd see like lots of specks of white hidden between the black, and then it doesn't look very good. and that's mainly the main detriment. You can see it's the same thing here, excess fabric. It's also same thing with the face. Basically just cut out a nice big square, make your eye in the middle, and then you can just cut out your head, match up your pattern, put the eye over the top, and cut the head out around that and get your desired shape. Earlier on we tried to cut the head out first and then put the eye on, but it's extremely difficult to get it in the right position without having something out of position, and then you have to scrap the whole thing. And this embroidery, the cutie marks probably take about 20 minutes and the eyes take about close to half hour to 35 minutes. So it's quite time consuming process as well, and you can't speed it up any because it's all machine made. And here's the next one in line. This will be the second eye. Basically what I do is the patterns are set up to be displayed in a grid fashion, and this one's I believe 2 3/4 by 3.5 inches tall. So I make a little marker here so that it can get lined up on the machine real easily. And then that just gives me an idea about where the eye is going to be on this fabric. And then basically what you do is we have 2 pieces to the hoop here. You're going to have some sort of backing on it to give it some extra strength. You put that on there. And then you'd lay your other fabric over on top of that. And this is just for demonstration. I'll do this for real later on. And basically you just place that over the top, press it down firmly, stretch out the fabric to make sure it gets nice and tight like we discussed earlier. And then from there head on to the machine and let it do its work. You have to do things like lining it up to match this little marker here that we have, and eventually 35 minutes later you'll get your eye. So I'm going to put this together for real and we'll see what the machine looks like when it gets working.